Let's get sweaty.
Hey guys, welcome to a Shenmue Dojo video. Today's video I'm going to be looking at Shenmue 4 and what the success criteria will be. So this is making the assumption that game gets released and the various things that will determine whether it is successful or not. So I'll be looking at the critical reception, community reception, which is very important, the story content, the sales, obviously that is dependent on budget, but I'll cover that. And then one other small thing, which I'm pretty sure you'll all work out where I'm going with this, but I will leave that one as a surprise to the end of the video. So let's dive straight in to critical reception. Now, modern video games, anything under an 8 out of 10, your 7 out of 10s are considered rubbish, mid. People don't want to touch them with a barge pole. Now, for me, that is insane. I've played plenty of 7 out of 10 games over the years and had a good time with them. It's not to say they're not flawed, but I've overlooked those and had a good time with the games anyway. Unfortunately, you don't get that leeway so much in games these days. People seem to jump off a cliff, think they've wasted their lives on 7 out of 10 games, and it's madness in the extreme, but that is what we are operating in the modern age. I don't come from an era like that. Apply that to Shenmue 3, it comes in at just under a 7 out of 10 in terms of critical reception from games, magazines, websites and the rest of it. So you're already slightly on the back foot, as I've just said, in terms of the reaction around that. So for me, Shenmue 4 has to hit an 8 out of 10 game as a bare minimum. If it hits a 9, fantastic, even better. 10 out of 10, unlikely given budgets and all the rest of it, but you never ever know. It can do, it may do, who knows. And don't forget the first 2 games obviously critically acclaimed as well, so there is a bit of history there. But if you're not at an 8 out of 10, which is a game for me that's generally pretty damn good with some minor flaws and tweaks, you're going to struggle because you will then get crapped on from a great height, because anything below an 8 is considered rubbish these days. I can't fathom why. It's really strange. I find it annoying. But that is what we're dealing with these days. So if Shenmue 4 doesn't come in an 8 out of 10, that means word of mouth won't travel. That means particularly streamers may not pick this up. And it just doesn't give it the best possible opportunity to be as successful as possible. I know it's a lot of pressure on the development team. And nobody goes out to go make a rubbish game by any stretch of the imagination. But that's where we need to be hitting. Minimum 8 out of 10. If we don't, I think we've then got a problem from that side of things. And casual players picking it up and all the rest of it, because word travels despite a 7 out of 10 game, in my view, being perfectly okay. Then, community reception. Now, you cannot have success with Shenmue without your core audience being there. Now, with modernising Shenmue, obviously, you're going to potentially run the risk of maybe alienating some of us. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to make some tweaks to make this game successful in terms of the critical reception, but the community reception is just as important. And the reason being is when you look at Shenmue 3, which I do think over time has got a better critical reception from the community itself. I think once people let it settle down, looked at what happened with the game, how it's developed and things, actually I think it gets a bit more respect than it did initially. But the big thing that it did was unfortunately split the Shenmue community. Now that split's probably just about more in favour of people liking 3 than not, but you cannot have Shenmue 4 do that. It is simply not a negotiable. If that happens, I think you finish the community off, because that division would just go deeper and deeper and deeper. You would potentially lose those people that are on the fence completely, and then you go from having quite a positive outlook towards future Shenmue games to going, do you know what, it's had 2 games here, it's split the community, I think we're done. And it could, in my opinion, I'm being very serious when I say this, it could definitely kill the series. I'm pretty sure it would take the community with it, and nobody wants that. So it's absolutely imperative that the vast majority of the Shenmue community like this game. Now, obviously, when sales come into it, you may look at it, no matter what the community think, if you sell 10 million copies, and you're quite right in some regards. But with Shenmue being a niche franchise, it's very unlikely to bust anything over 1 million, maybe 1.5 million sales if we were being hugely optimistic potentially. You can't have that core audience divided. It's a lot of work to get reunited again. James and I know about all of this. You can't do it. It will kill things potentially forever. And then you've really got to go back to basics and think about how you could even revive this thing if people want to do it at all. Then you come on to the story. Now, whether you like Shenmue 3, whether you dislike Shenmue 3, I think we can all be agreed that the story execution in Shenmue 3 and the content is lacking. We know this. We've talked about this at length. I'm not going to go into the details about it. So what Shenmue 4 must do is do the polar opposite. It must tell an epic story that moves Ryo's journey along significantly. It must show his personal growth. It must show his growth in martial arts. He doesn't necessarily have to be getting to hitting Land E potentially, but he needs to show progression. He needs to show maturity. He might have a major incident or something that pushes him along. As I say, beating Land E isn't necessarily the end goal. There's bigger things at play here. Yu Suzuki's talked about this at length. But what 4 must do is smash that story out of the park. It must nail it and move things on greatly. I know there's a school of thought out there that are thinking one game should finish it, and I can completely understand that argument, and to a point I might sit in that camp. But whatever happens, if you're going to have another game, 4 needs to absolutely smash the story and move it on leaps and bounds so that you set up the epic finale in a 5th game should you get there. If it doesn't, again, I think you kill it. I think everything goes and we're done. And unfortunately, that's the unfortunate reality we are working in at the moment. So that then probably needs naturally on to sales. Now, I've done a video on sales and digital versus physical. Go and check that out if you haven't done so already, because I go into a lot of detail around how this is all split and how this could all work. But sales is relative to budget and the success factoring around that. So as an example, just here, if Shenmue 4 had a budget of $20 million and sold 1 million copies at retail of $50, that's $50 million revenue, which is, you look at that, that's pretty damn good. So you take off your $20 million for your development and all the rest of it. And then in terms of the rest of the revenue, that's then split between licensees, stores, and the printing of the physical editions themselves. So the publisher could end up with anything between $5, maybe $10 million profit if they're lucky, which, let's be honest, isn't a great return on the profit and the investment, but 1 million sales does look really good, and you might keep continuing to drive sales as things go by. And if the game's good, then you get a longer tail through it, and you might keep generating that money. But it's all relative a little bit here to what the budget is. If you have a lower budget at 1 million sales at $50, obviously you make more money. But then comes in what I think they should do, and this is not a popular decision, I completely understand this, but in my view, is you sell it digitally only. And you do a very small limited run of physical games like collector's edition, something like that, through limited run games or strictly limited, whoever wants to pick it up. Because 1 million sales at obviously $50 is 50 million, but the split's different with these storefronts. The the industry standard rather, is 30% goes to the storefront, 70% goes to everybody else, the publisher. Now, normally publishers pick up everything else first. So then when you take out the 20 million development, that's a $15 million profit. Now, that is much better, much healthier. And then if you add on your physical, your collector's editions and things like that, you then just enhance that further and potentially make this thing more viable. It's not popular, and I know this argument with physical and digital, and I'm physical games all the way, I really am. But if this means that you can get the game made and potentially give it a better chance of success, I think it needs to be done. Just my view. And then the final criteria. Now, you probably worked this out from this video, but the 5th and final criteria of this, which is quite ironic, is Shenmue 5 being greenlit. So you've had all of the above, ultimate success here. You get your million sales, you make your money, and then very soon afterwards you get the announcement Shenmue 5 is coming in God knows what year, but it's a year, 18 months off the release of Shenmue 4. Brilliant, thank you very much. And then the communities can really build on the success of 4, hopefully the fantastic story it tells, and get ready for that epic finale that we've all been desperate for, and I do believe we can still get. Obviously, much easier me saying this than this thing actually happening. There's a million other things around this series that need to be ironed out and sorted out, and I hope people can. But wouldn't it be good to get 4 as a massive success, and then 5 gets greenlit? We've never had it that easy, guys, but you never know, right? Let's be hopeful here. We can't not be. Anyway, what do you guys think in terms of the criteria I've talked about? Do you guys agree with the criteria? Have I missed any criteria? Obviously, let me know in the comments below, and I will pick some of those up as we go through. As I always say, for £2 a month, you can be a member, get all the videos ahead of time. None of the content's locked behind a paywall, and all of the money that we get goes towards the funding of the website, competitions that James and I and staff put together as well. And as always, guys, thank you for sticking with me and the content. Very much appreciated. And I will be back with a video in the not too distant future. For now, guys, take care. Have a good one.